I've been raw feeding for over 5 years now, and over this time, I've heard so many things that turned out to be nothing more than silly myths. Things like raw food makes pets bloodthirsty and aggressive, which, if that were true, my pets should be tearing my limbs off at this point. But instead, they're sweet, cuddly angels that couldn't hurt a fly. And then there's other claims like commercial pet food is the only nutritious option for pets. Like, what would you think if your doctor told you to eat processed food instead of fresh food? Anyway, these are just a few silly myths that some of you may already know. However, there are a few that are lesser known myths that I'm going to be talking about in this video. The first is that 80-10-5-5 is the only ratio you should use for raw diets. 80-10-5-5 refers to the structure of the raw diet: 80% muscular meat, 10% raw bone, 5% liver, and 5% one other secreting organ. This became popular because it's a simple way to make the diet loosely mimic a prey animal's body. For beginners, this is a perfectly fine ratio to start with. But in recent years, some raw feeders have been obsessing so much over this ratio that they actually scold owners who deviate from them, even if it's just a little bit. The thing is, though, myself and other raw feeders have found a few problems with a strict 80-10-5-5 ratio. The first is that whole prey animals don't all have the exact same bone to meat to organ ratios. If our pets were in the wild, they wouldn't always be eating the same prey day after day. And even if they were, it wouldn't always be at the same life stage. So if they're not eating the exact same ratios in the wild, and we are trying to replicate that natural diet, why are we sticking to such a strict ratio? The second problem with these ratios is that it isn't even that close to the ratios of a prey animal's body. Sure, 80-10-5-5 works and is totally fine to use, but after feeding a diet of mainly whole prey to my ferrets, I noticed how different their bodies were from when I fed 80-10-5-5. Whole prey animals provide a bit more bone than 10% and are also much higher in muscular and secreting organs. So, to me, it's more appropriate to build raw diets with these ratios. Now, this too does not have to be strict, and the numbers can vary depending on what foods are being fed. It's also important to note that one set ratio shouldn't be used for every single species. 80-10-5-5 suggests 10% bone in the diet. However, cats actually do much better on a bone intake of 6 to 8%. This is mainly due to stool consistency, and 10% may cause constipation in some cats. So, my point with this myth is that not one ratio fits all animals. The second myth is that you need a second secreting organ to balance a meal. We just talked about how a second organ should be included because it brings the meal closer to a natural diet. So, with that being said, am I suggesting that the second organ doesn't have to be included for the meal to be balanced? Yep. Now, if you're just starting out with raw feeding and using 80-10-5-5 and feeding a second organ, again, this is perfectly fine to do and encouraged. But I do want to show you how the nutrients in a meal can differ depending on what's in it. Let's make it simple with an example. Let's say my dog Matsu's raw meal consisted of chicken neck, beef liver, chicken heart, chicken gizzard, beef chunks, pork loin, and chicken thigh. This is enough variety to actually cover most nutrients that a second secreting organ would provide. However, if his diet consisted of only chicken neck, meat, heart, gizzard, and liver, some B vitamins as well as copper will be low in the diet. This means a second secreting organ would need to be added in. Am I suggesting you shouldn't feed a second secreting organ? Not at all. I would still include one myself just to add more body part variety, but I just wanted to give you a little insight about this subject. Okay, you know how we were just talking about how raw feeders formulate diets to mimic a prey animal? Well, this is what the next myth revolves around, and that is, all whole prey is balanced. Whole prey animals don't just provide bone, organs, and muscular meat. They also provide glands, ligaments, blood, bone marrow, and many more parts that we just can't find at the store. Many of these parts can provide some nutrients that are low in a raw diet. And since whole prey is our pet's natural diet in the wild, this must mean it's balanced, right? Well, this is what I thought for a very long time. But after looking at the actual nutrient profiles of a few whole prey animals, I noticed how different their nutrient profiles were. For example, 100 grams of guinea pig provides 1.8 milligrams of iron, while 100 grams of hamster provides 7.2 milligrams of iron. And while 100 grams of hamster provides almost no vitamin E, 100 grams of mice provides over 2 milligrams. So, what's the solution to providing a balanced diet if you mainly feed whole prey? Feed a variety. My ferrets almost exclusively eat whole prey, and I make sure to rotate between at least 3 different prey animals. Alright, I know this was a lot of info. So, does any of this surprise you? What's something that you recently learned that is or isn't true about raw feeding? Let me know in the comments below.